Okay. Oh, 10 seconds. Sorry. Okay, welcome back. This is Christina King on Embracing Your Greatness. I'm so glad you joined us today because if you're like my 21-year-old daughter, you're not sure what you're supposed to be doing. Some of you might even say, "Why am I here? I know I'm supposed to be doing something, but I don't know what it is I'm supposed to be doing." So it's so very important that I think that I had my next guest on today. And as for those of you who tune in every week, you know that I look to the Holy Father's intentions of the month to discern what the programming is going to be. That way, this show isn't a mouthpiece for myself, but it's something to allow the Holy Spirit to work through me and the gifts of Radio Maria to bring the Holy Spirit's voice to the world. And what is the intentions of the Holy Father this month? It is that Christians of the West, that'd be us folks on the western part of the globe here, is that we would be docile to the Holy Spirit. Docility, of course, I was telling you, meaning that this gentle receptivity and openness. And why do we want to be open to that? Because guess what? The Holy Spirit is truly moving in the church right now. This is something that is, I think, healing wounds, and we talked about that last month. But particularly, I think there's going to be something inspired, something God-given and unique that is not only going to preserve the church, but is going to inspire others to their greatness, which is what this show is about. How are we going to bring about reestablishing the dignity of the human person to the world unless we're going to have this kind of supernatural help? And if you've ever met somebody where you say, "Gee, I don't know what it is about them, but I sure like them," sometimes that's this charism, this charismatic personality. And so to help us better understand what gifts and charisms are, my guest today is Sherry Ann Weddle. Sherry, are you on the phone with me right now?
I am. Hello, Christina.
Hi, I'm very glad to talk with you. Yvonne, one of our other hosts with Radio Maria, she was talking to me one day about you, and I was hooked. I remember being in high school and taking this inventory on what I was supposed to be when I growed up, and it checks to see where you are in your science and your math. And I remember thinking, really, this is it? This is all that's going to help me figure out what I'm supposed to do? And I think that was because I knew on a supernatural level that it wasn't just about maybe what your mathematical ability was or not what, or what it wasn't, that would be the ultimate determiner or determinator of what you're called to do. And I think you must have got that same aha moment.
Well, yes, I desperately, as a young adult, I was desperate to find out what I was supposed to be doing in life and what God wanted of me, and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. But I didn't know at that point, as nearly as much as I do now, about the importance of discerning charisms, which is actually one of the first major clues a lot of us have. Charisms are these incredible supernatural gifts that we have been given when we receive the Holy Spirit in baptism. And they are given to us by God for the sake of our mission in life, for the sake of other people. So they're not really just for us, not for us to keep, they're for us to give away. And they are so amazing. So gifts like sometimes healing or hospitality or leadership or music or there's a huge spectrum of them. But when it's not just your talent, see, it is different than a natural talent, because you're really, really talking about the power of God passing through us with our assent and our cooperation and doing something in the lives of other people that we are not capable of doing, that only God can do. And so that's part of what you're looking for when you're looking for one of these charisms. And we've worked with about 60,000 people, Catholics all over the world, at the Catherine of Siena Institute, helping them do a discernment process. Because with a charism comes a call. They are major clues as to your mission, your God-given mission in life, and they are tools that you and I have been given to carry out that mission. So the discernment process is very, very exciting. But what's interesting is that, we've traveled all over the world. We've worked in like 105 dioceses, and we've been on 5 continents and all that. And everywhere we go, people say, "How come I've never heard this before?" And even I was a lifelong Catholic, and I went to Catholic school and all that stuff. And they say, "I haven't heard about this before," even though the charisms were debated at the Second Vatican Council right along with the role and the mission of the laity. So it's very exciting to be able to take the church's tradition in this area, which is very rich. It goes way back to the beginning. This is not recent. The early fathers of the church were talking about charisms. St. Paul was talking about charisms. St. Thomas Aquinas was talking about charisms. So this is very, very historic. But to make it accessible to the ordinary person, the ordinary Catholic in the pews in a regular parish, that has been so exciting for us. So, and the stories we hear on what God does in the lives of people as they discern these charisms. We had a woman who actually she drove from North Carolina to a workshop in South Carolina to discern. She had retired early. She was actually a pharmacist, and I never met her. I was not part of this process. I only heard about it later. She drove to a little workshop in South Carolina because she felt like she didn't know what to do with herself. She had all these degrees and expertise, and she was just at odds. And it was through that discernment process she went through a called and gifted workshop. She took the inventory, began her discernment process, and by the time she wrote me, she says, I'm about to leave to go be a missionary in Tanzania. And she says, I'm going to be training people to give out AIDS medication at the only medical school in Tanzania. And, it was such an amazing story, but she said, I would never have dreamed of this in a million years, except that I went through this discernment process in this little group, in a neighboring state. And it was so funny when I was telling that story to a group of women in my own parish. One woman, she just kind of burst out and she goes, well, she's like Esther, I mean, who knows but what she was raised up by God for such a time as this. And I'm thinking, you think? I mean, yes, here she is with all these incredible skills, skilled pharmacist. There's the AIDS epidemic in Africa. She never made the connection. But that's the kind of power that when we're discerning these charisms, especially in the middle of the Christian community, we need the help of the Christian community around us, because it really is a discernment process, and it's not just, how we feel about something. Then people just, like fires, get lit, and they do the most extraordinary things. So it's been a very exciting process to witness.
Okay. Well, I think for some people out there, I mean, and myself included, we heard a lot about the charismatic renewal, this charismatic movement. How does discerning what your charisms are have to do with the charismatic renewal? Can you help me understand what that is?
Yeah, I actually, it's not, didn't come out of the charismatic renewal because I don't have a background in it, and neither did my co-founder, Father Michael Sweeney. Basically, the charisms and the discernment of charisms is really magisterial. I mean, this is the teaching of the church. If you look at the documents, if you look in the catechism, it's, the lay people, every lay person, every baptized person is urged to discern the gifts and the charisms that they have been enriched by, given by the Holy Spirit for the sake of their mission in life. So this is not just for people who are part of the renewal. I mean, it's great if you are, but it's for everybody. This is completely independent of any association with, the charismatic renewal as such, because we all receive the Holy Spirit in baptism and confirmation.
So really the charismatic renewal, at least tell me if I'm wrong in this, is I was thinking that this was like almost like an extra helping of mashed potatoes at the table, like that the Holy Spirit was pouring out upon the world as a gift for the faithful of the church at this period in time, for the sake of preservation of the church, but also like as an act of love and mercy to help the faithful to discern, answer that call, but not to rely on themselves, but to rely on the gift from God. Was I right in kind of understanding it as that?
Yeah, well, really, what's really, really interesting is that the renewal, which started in 1967 in the U.S., actually happened just a couple of years after the debates at the council. So I think there was real Holy Spirit timing there. Okay, because the church had already debated at the highest level the whole issue of the charisms. Were they given to all the baptized, or were they just a sign of extraordinary holiness for a few people? And what about the mission of the laity? And I think of the renewal as a grassroots explosion of what had been debated and decided, under the leading of the Holy Spirit at the council a few years earlier. So, yeah, I think the timing is very, very interesting. And, of course, it has made the charisms very living for many, many people. But I have to tell you that we've worked with many thousands of people who've never been involved with the charismatic renewal, and they are manifesting the same charisms.
Well, I want to read through some of these for those that might be scratching their head listening, because, as you know, I post to a number of different places for these shows. There's something you have that I got off your website, I believe, called the Inventory of Catholic Gifts and Charism. And as I was looking through it, because I've got 5 daughters, and my daughters were very excited to hear about all of this. I was looking at one that, for instance, you have it marked into spiritual gift, the description expressed as, and then church examples, which I just love. And like the first one, you had, as an example, charism of encouragement. And then as a description, you have empowers a Christian to be an effective channel of God's love, nurturing others through his or her presence and words of comfort, encouragement, and counsel. Then you have a number of biblical references, including like Romans 12:8, but a number of others. Under expressed as or in, you've got counseling or mentoring, parenthood, small group facilitator, prayer team or grief ministry, Eucharistic minister to the sick. And then for church examples, you've got St. Francis de Sales, Carol Houselander, whom I love, by the way, St. Barnabas. And I was thinking, yes, this is awesome, because how did you come up with this? I mean, to put them like this so we can say, okay, my brain can get this now.
Well, I was challenged when I finished grad school. I created the Called and Gifted, the initial version. It'll be 18 years ago this fall, and I just finished grad school, and they asked, a local organization asked me to create a way for their leaders to discern their charisms, and I thought, well, I don't know anything about it, but hey, I'm still on a grad school schedule, so, but one thing I knew, I didn't know much, but one thing I did know was that I had to create a way for Catholics to do this together, because there would be so little support in the average parish for this if you were just on your own.
Yeah.
And one of the other things that was obvious is that the charisms had manifested throughout the Church's history. And so I did a lot of research on saints like Francis de Sales and St. John de Chantal, whose feast day is Friday, and people like that, how did the Holy Spirit actually use them in their lifetime, which is different than we tend to think of them, well, they're the patron saint of X, but actually I went and read very carefully their biographies, and I looked for patterns where the Holy Spirit genuinely used them in their life, and Francis de Sales being a fantastic example of the charism of encouragement. So we talk about all this at every workshop, because we talk contemporary stories, because we've talked to tens of thousands of ordinary Catholics and heard their stories of discernment and being used by God, which are just so amazing. But we also have done a lot of the research into how the charisms were manifested in history, and we strongly suggest you take a patron for your discernment. So if you want to discern encouragement, St. Francis de Sales would be a great man. Read about his life, ask him to pray for you as you go through your discernment process.
You know what I think is pretty cool about what you're doing, actually, is in the Byzantine Church, I know for sure, they have the use of icons and holy sacred art to inspire. And they would actually pick a saint. That saint would be kind of somebody that they would be connected with their whole life, and even maybe carry that image of that icon with them. And this is so beautiful because, I remember years ago hearing the Blessed Pope John Paul II was talking about how we need to be looking to the saints to inspire us. And I think that particularly that's the case with this whole thing is when you can, okay, it's one thing. It's kind of like telling a story to somebody and then using visual imagery. We have kids that learn by doing, kids that learn by reading. There's all different ways. But the way you've done this, which is what I love about it, is you've given us concrete examples, you've given us biblical foundations, but then you've given us people who've expressed the manifestation of that gift, that charism through the Holy Spirit in their own life. And then if we're still scratching our heads, we can be like, okay, I'm going to pull out Carol Houselander's book or St. Teresa Little Flower. I'm going to read. And then we enter into their yes. And then I think God starts speaking to us in that moment. It's kind of like...
Some of the times it names you. I mean, you may read about Teresa of Avila, came into town to start a new monastery with like no money. You know, she has like 6 cents in her pocket and all this sort of thing. And she says things like, you know, why should we not expect great things from God? We serve one who is all powerful. Okay, and you may go, yes, yes, I get it. And you may be a sign that you have a charism of faith, just like she did.
Yeah.
Or you may go, oh no, that's not me, you know, but you'll resonate with some other saint's story. And so it's very powerful, you know, to evoke that. I mean, we're teaching a discernment process, and I do want to make that clear.
Yeah. This isn't just like reading through a list and
like
saying,
you take an inventory.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't just take an inventory, have a number, and then you know your charisms. What we're teaching is a process. And it's really important because you have to take action to discern a charism because these are real, okay?
Right.
They're not fantasies. They're not projections of our, you know, our dream world on the universe. They're ways that God really passes through us into the world and leaves ripples, leaves fingerprints, okay, all over the furniture.
Yeah.
And you can see them, and people around you can see them. That's why discernment is so important.
Yes, they sure can. They sure can. Yeah.
You know, we ask people to pick a particular gift that they think might be a charism for them, and to actually experiment with it at least 2 hours a week for an extended period of time, and then to look for the signs.
I have another. I want to read through a couple of these just for people to get an idea of some of the categories. And I know you said there's literally all kinds, and there is a discernment process here. But I just want to pique the interest on some people who might be watching. We've got the charism of music, and you talk about this being a channel of God's creative goodness through others through writing or performing music. And then you have Blessed Hildegard of Bingen, and Giovanni di la Palestrina. And then you've got iconic painters. Being somebody who has the charism of craftsmanship. So although we're going to have break in just a minute, when we come back from break, I'd really like to go over a few of the specifics on a few on each page that you have here, just to kind of help solidify what it is we're talking about, maybe pique the interest in some more people. But I also then want to ask you, because I'm guessing that you probably have been already inspired in your mind to see this, is if you could bring out persons and personalities in our world and culture today that you clearly, being that you've discerned these things so long, that like Charlie Sheen or Lady Gaga, where maybe you see a possible gift or charism in a specific area where they have failed to embrace that greatness. So let's talk.
We'd have to. I don't know enough about Charlie Sheen's life or Lady Gaga to talk immediately about their charisms. But
we got to go to break. Okay, we've got to go to break. So we'll be back in one moment with Sherry on the gifts and charisms. Stay tuned, please.